Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
Jesus, Bob.
How's that for state-of-the-art video editing?
Will you see me in the afterlife? Will you tell me it'll be alright? Will you tell me that I'll be just fine?
Hello everyone, the December review here, back again with a movie review today. We have the long-awaited return of the sarcastic ghost with the most, Beetlejuice. As always, spoilers are ahead, so make sure to check out the film, which is still in select theaters and can be found to rent or buy at all the usual streaming services. So here we are with a follow-up 3 decades after Tim Burton brought us his twisted take on the afterlife. As we know, Geena Davis and Alec Baldwin starred as the Maitlands, a couple who met an early fate and had to figure out a way out of their home while a new family moved in. So they called for the help of Beetlejuice, of course played by Michael Keaton. Beetlejuice was a solid box office success and gained a mega cult following over the years. In fact, here's a picture with me and Geena Davis. And a bunch of boxes, but that's okay. Side note, A League of Their Own is one of the best films ever made. That end scene between Dottie and Kit at the station is pure movie magic. But anyways, meeting Geena, I was able to see firsthand just how popular the Beetlejuice lexicon has remained. So Tim Burton is back behind the lens for this super anticipated return. Beetlejuice 2 opens with Lydia Deetz, Winona Ryder, filming a talk show on the supernatural. She ends up having a vision of that old chucklehead beetle and is concerned that something is going on. She has a daughter, Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, who is a bit estranged from Lydia, scoffing at her ability to interact with the afterlife. Meanwhile, Delia Deetz, Catherine O'Hara, informs Lydia that her father has passed, and everyone meets up in Connecticut for the funeral. Also, meanwhile, Beetlejuice has an office job in the outer realm, working alongside Bob, his shrunken-head friend who returns from the original. He's informed that his ex-wife Dolores is on a deadly rampage to find Beetlejuice. There's also a whole thing about Lydia getting married, a ghost that Astrid finds, a surprisingly funny Willem Dafoe, and about 12 other plot points that run into each other during this hour and 45-minute film. Expectations are going to be high when the reboot and requel train stops at a brand such as Beetlejuice. It's an oxymoron in many ways. Part 2 exists 30 plus years later because of how successful Part 1 was, setting the stage for high anticipation, especially here since talks of doing a sequel has been circling around for years now. It's a safe bet for the studios, director and cast that even a lukewarm revisit to the story will be a financial hit. There's already a built-in audience that will see the film and buy it, so the risk is much lower than, say, for an original concept. Hence the reason we see so many of these films and TV shows being made. And I don't really mind overall. A lot of them are for properties I enjoy, so it's cool to have something to look forward to, but the end result can be a bit formulaic, and for me, Beetlejuice is, well, a bit too formulaic. One of the reasons I feel the original works so well is that you have a very clear storyline. The Maitlands need help to get a family out of their home. They call Beetlejuice and chaos ensues, while the two warring factions come together to eradicate him. It's a pretty well-conceived film, filled with great set pieces that really zoned in on that Tim Burton style. His clear vision and creativeness is his own trademark. You know you're watching a Burton film just by the set design alone. But there are a few too many things holding the movie back to really make it feel as creative as the first. The film's storyline gets a bit too ambitious for its own good. There are a lot of moving parts here that the screen bounces back and forth to. The original was mostly contained to its house location, allowing it to really focus on that narrative. Here we are all over the place, different states, homes, streets, and that's just the real world. The afterlife jumps from one place to the next as well, while the two worlds are intercut scene by scene at times. And with so many plot points in the mix, it all gets a bit confusing, especially once Astrid and Lydia cross over. These multiple ideas, while interesting on their own, aren't given enough time to have an arc as successful as it could have been. As an example, we have Beetlejuice and his ex-wife. we're told that Beetle really doesn't want her finding him or it's going to be certain doom. We get a rather effective scene where she comes back to life in what's probably the film's best and most original moment. She is set up as this soul-stealing Terminator, and when she finally does find Beetlejuice after disappearing long enough for the audience to already kind of move on, she poses no real threat to the characters and is vanquished as quickly as a Thanos snap. This, along with a few other similar concepts, ultimately bring the film down a bit. There isn't an urgency in its story, it's just that there's a lot of story. Which brings me to another noticeable difference for me, and that's the film's energy. In the original, Beetlejuice was an over-the-top lightning rod, a bit too over-the-top at times. Here he's scaled way back. I mean, that makes sense considering it's 30 plus years later as a character, but it doesn't leap off the screen when it needs to at times. There are times where the movie finds its footing. In addition to that Dolores introduction, I thought that the arc between Lydia and Astrid held the film together pretty well. Astrid really wants nothing to do with Lydia's paranormal existence, finding the whole thing rather embarrassing. Their early struggle with one another sets up the eventual moments when they come together. For Astrid, that's meeting a ghost, which opens up not just the door to the afterlife, but also to Lydia. Maybe she's not crazy after all. Those are the things that the film needed more of because when it works, it's great movie making. I also appreciate the use of practical effects here. That Burton style over the years was brought to life by some very impressive FX work. From stop motion to miniature scaling, if it's in the room, then it gets on camera. It's a lost art. It's quicker and cheaper just to green screen an entire production, key it all in later and hope it's done well enough that the audience doesn't seem to mind. The problem with CGI is that it's often too noticeable, even all these years since its inception as the industry standard. Thankfully, that isn't an issue here. Sure, there are a few things that look a bit out of place. That final sandworm was odd, but Burton and the FX team did a great job. I've learned over the years, especially with this channel, that films maybe now more than ever are a lot like music in terms of collecting a true opinion. I've often wondered how a music critic can listen to a record once or twice and come to any concrete conclusion of its songs. For me, an album could take months before I'm fully aware of its magnitude. Sometimes it's a lot quicker, but it's the main reason I don't review records as much here. For films, I'm finding as the landscape changes, so does my concerning eye for what it all means. It's a lot easier to watch a movie and discuss it than say a record, and that won't change. But I find myself with a film like Beetlejuice needing to balance the expectations out with the end result, which does seem to require maybe repeat viewings. And that end result for me is a lukewarm return to this world. It needed to focus more on a few things rather than so many things. It's also missing the Maitlands in some capacity. The acting is good here. O'Hara is a standout that brings some much needed energy to the film. I also enjoyed the musical moments here that harken back to the original. The ending number was a bit out of left field and went on for a while, but it was interesting. Overall, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice falls somewhere right in the middle of the reboot, requel, legacy scale. It tries to mix up its formula a bit while holding on to its formula that made it a success in the first place. There are plenty of callbacks to be found, and Bob really got the short end of the stick here. So fans will have a lot to Easter egg with over repeat viewings. It's acted well, it looks good, the camera work shines, and the effects are great, but it just needed a tighter script and a whole lot more energy. I give Beetlejuice Beetlejuice 2.5 stars out of 5 on the sandworm scale. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel for more, and let me know your thoughts on the film in the comments section below.